Hello everyone and welcome back to the video. Today we're going to be taking a look at why the current meta for Age of Empires 2 is just simply so fast paced. We're talking about competitive AoE2 in tournaments, and we're also talking about just regular ranked ladder games at all elos. Everyone is trying to play faster and everyone is trying to do their builds so that they can get up to the next age as quickly as possible and start to punish their opponent. In this video I'm going to be focusing specifically on how fast people are getting from Dark Age to Feudal Age. And it doesn't really matter if we're talking 3-vil start or 9-vil start. In every game mode, people will rush going to Feudal Age, more so these days than in the past when it comes to the modern day meta. So in this video, I'm going to be covering what's the difference between going up to Feudal Age at 21 pop, 22 pop, 20 pop, or 19 pop, or 18 pop, etc. What's the difference between going up fast versus going up later? And I'm also going to be talking about why players are choosing to go up as fast as possible these days. And I'm also going to talk about how they do it and how they even afford anything once they do get to Feudal Age with their super fast uptime. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop right in and take a look at this interesting topic. So in the past, let's say 10 years ago, 22 population was considered a fast scout rush. In fact, 21 population was considered to be extremely fast back in the day, and pretty much no one was really doing a 20 pop scout rush because we considered it way too quick and you just wouldn't have that good economy behind it to sustain unit production. Now there were some civilizations like the Mongols back in the day that could up very quickly at 18 or 19 population, and this was known, but players didn't really try to go up at 18 or 19 pop with a generic civilization or with a civilization without a great economy bonus in the early game. However, fast forward a few years with the release of Definitive Edition, we started to see 20 pop scout rushes be a lot more popular, and we even started to see 19 pop scout rushes appear as a way to kind of be a little bit more sharper or with some of the better civs. And then Mongol scout rushes got down to like 17 pop, and it was pretty crazy with that. Now, so in 2023, we're seeing the craziest builds we've ever seen. 18 population scout rushes, sometimes even 17 population scout rushes if you got a good economy bonus. Mongols are doing stuff like 16 pop, Lithuanians are doing stuff like 16 pop scout rushes, and this is what is modern day acceptable for a fast scout rush. Now, what happened in all these years? Why was 22 pop scout rush before the meta, and now it's down to like 19 population for a generically fast scout rush? Well, the reason is people just realize how strong going up to Feudal Age really is. There's a lot of benefits that going up earlier gives you over your opponent who might be staying a little bit later. It also has to do with how men-at-arms affect the meta, men-at-arms being the most aggressive opening you can open with. However, if your opponent goes up 1 or 2 pop earlier with archers, men-at-arms can find 0 damage. And so to counter men-at-arms, players have been going up a lot faster than the men-at-arms player who needs more economy to do his rush, to be able to counter the men-at-arms and be able to push them back and stay in Feudal Age and stabilize instead of taking a lot of damage to the men-at-arms and falling very far behind. Now, before we go into why people are actually going up faster, let's go ahead and talk about what's the difference between a 22 pop and a 21 pop, or a 20 pop and a 19 pop scout rush. Now, I did the math once and it came out to around 40 to 50 resources for the guy who stays 1 pop later. When it comes to going up later in Age of Empires, it's typically known as the later you go up, the more resources you're going to be able to gather when your town center is busy upgrading to the next age. Going up to Feudal Age takes a couple minutes to research, and so having an extra villager in those couple minutes, gathering resources will make it so you have more resources than your opponents who upped with 1 less vil. That being said, the guy who upped with 1 less vil will be, of course, faster to the Feudal Age. So it's a complete opportunity cost. If you stay in Feudal Age a little later, you have more resources, but if you go up faster, you have less resources, but the faster uptime and the benefits that come with that. Now, I did the math once and it came around 40 or 50 resources per population that you gather in that time. And this is also factoring the faster double bid axe that your opponent gets with the 25-second difference. So, I'll gather more resources in when I hit Feudal Age, I'll have more resources because I was gathering more with the extra population, but he gets double bid axe 25 seconds faster, and so he gets a little bit more wood, but I still have a net 40 to 50 resources advantage over my opponents if I up 1 vil later. Now, the problem with this in the current meta is that although the extra resources are nice to sustain production for the scouts and the men-at-arms and the archers and help you develop a strong Feudal Age, the benefits that come with upping faster simply outweigh those extra 40 or 50 resources. Let me give you an example that's going to touch on the extremes of both cases so you really understand why upping faster is better, and then I'll talk about some points that makes upping faster truly better. Let's say some old school player is going with the 22 pop men-at-arm rush, and this is a build that was popular, let's say 3-4 years ago. And then I'm a modern day player, 2023 top player, is going for an 18 pop one range archer builder to counter his men-at-arms. Let's say he's up 200 resources by the time he gets to Feudal Age. He'll invest 100 food and 40 gold into the men-at-arm upgrade, and he'll also invest 60 food and 20 gold per militia, so 3 militia, so 80 times 3, that's 240. 240 plus 40 plus 100, 380 resources to field 3 men-at-arms on the field with a scout and attack me at a timing of roughly 10-15. Since I'm going 18 pop, I get to Feudal Age around 8 minutes and 45 seconds, around there, somewhere like that. I think it's 8 minutes 50 seconds. And I'm going to go for one range, which costs 175 wood, plus the barracks, which we both make, so I can cancel that. And all I need to do is make 2 archers to defend this. One archer costs 25 wood, 45 gold, and, well, multiply that by 2. And you can see that just those 2 archers, very low investment, right off the bat with the 18 pop, and I can easily clear his men-at-arms. 2 archers are enough to counter all those resources. So even though he's up 200 resources, because he upped 4 pop later, he's actually down the 380 resources that he wasted on the men-at-arm rush. And so that is why upping earlier compared to later gives you a massive advantage when it comes to today's meta. And you might argue, well, what if the guy goes up 22 pop and plays a bit more of a defensive build order? Well, that's totally fine, and this is actually part of the meta these days. Going up 22 pop and walling up instead of attacking can be good. You get those extra resources, you invest them into walls, but then you give up map control and it gets a little bit more tricky from there. So we're not going to cover too much into that, that rabbit hole, maybe for another video. But for the purpose of a rush, as you can clearly see from this example, going up later for those extra resources will simply completely kill off your rush, and therefore all the resources you invest into that rush will be completely obsolete and completely useless, and you end up losing a lot more than you actually gain. Not to mention, after your men-at-arm die, he still has those 2 archers, so he's still able to pressure you with those 2 archers, and you have to find a response. Alright, that's obviously an extreme example, but let's go ahead and talk about the main benefits of being, let's say, just 1 population earlier than your opponent. We already established that you're going to be down 50 resources, so the benefits have to be enough to compensate those 50 resources at least, if not more. So the main benefits is as follows. You have 25 seconds faster to Feudal Age, which lets you drop a range or a stable faster, which means you get Feudal Age army 25 seconds faster on average on the field than your opponent. That's a very obvious one. The second advantage is getting the stronger scout, which plus to attack, faster speed, more line of sight, a lot quicker than your opponent, and that lets you A, scout better, B, kill his scout if you find him, and C, start harassing his villagers right away. This can prevent your opponent from walling up the map if he wants to play defensive. And the third benefit is picking up that double bit axe a bit earlier and already being in Feudal Age to start developing your Feudal Age economy with eco upgrades, Horse Scholar and double bit axe. And that's not the main benefit. The main benefit is really the other 2 points I mentioned, but double bit axe earlier is definitely still nice, and it's worth picking up for sure. Now, of course, we don't want to hit any extreme when it comes to, going up at like 15 pop but not being able to afford anything, because that doesn't take advantage of our benefits. The benefit of getting a range or a stable out earlier and affording some army is part of going up earlier. So we have to find that fine line between upping earlier and affording the resources, or having the resources to afford the army we can make and we need to make, and upping way too fast and not being able to afford it. So you have to find that sweet spot where you're upping as fast as possible, but you can still afford your army. And that is what the current meta is all about. Every single tournament game you're going to watch, people are trying to hit that sweet spot with every civilization, every single map, and the best strategists are the ones that are able to come up with the strongest aggressive strategies using that sweet point, using that sweet spot where they up really fast and are able to afford whatever they need to afford to put pressure on the map. It's a really, really interesting topic, and when it comes to theory crafting for tournaments, this is what every single player is doing, or if you're not doing this, should be doing this. So if you're an up-and-coming player that hasn't thought of it this way, definitely pay attention to this point because it's extremely important. You want to go up as fast as possible, but still afford what you need to afford to be able to put pressure on the map and stay either defensively or offensively. So you either stabilize his push if he's going men-at-arms or drush, or you put pressure with your own, aggression. Okay, now that we've established that this is what the current meta is, this is by far the best way to play the game, let's talk about how it's actually done and how do you actually afford something or anything when you up that fast. Let's say we're talking about 18 pop. And also, why is it possible to do this today and not 5 years ago? Why couldn't this have been the meta 5 years ago? Well, first let's talk about how it's done. First thing is builder optimization. players have been playing this game for 20 plus years, and we're learning new things every day. And we're learning these days how to make the sharpest builds possible to gather the most efficient amount of resources in the quickest amount of time, pretty much, and get up to feudal age, while also allocating our villagers to the right resources to afford exactly what we need, and we're limiting excess resources. You don't want to have an extra 200 wood that you're not spending in early feudal. That's considered inefficient. The next thing is luring deer. Luring deer has made a very big emergence into the meta and is now being done by pretty much everyone. Everyone is luring deer, and not just 1 or 2 deer. People are going up to like 3 or 4 deer sometimes as well, because we realize that luring deer is a very fast food source, and although you're giving up scouting to lure deer, if you can go up really fast, you still have time to scout your opponent and adapt to whatever they're going for. So luring deer has a lot less negative side to it than positive side these days, and the hunt is very valuable. And the third thing that makes it a lot easier, or allows us to up that fast, is simply quality of life features that we didn't have back in the day. So shift queuing, for example, from one sheep to another wasn't possible back in the day. So with all these builder optimizations, strategic things like luring deer in excess, and also quality of life changes, makes it a lot easier to do these builds these days and not 5 years ago. And so this is why, as we learn new things, with the quality of life changes, we're able to optimize our play and have the sharpest Age of Empires possible. Now, the last thing on the list is, how do you afford anything with upping that fast? Well, what we're really diving into these days, and what people are trying to figure out, is how to sacrifice any bit of extra economy to afford military units and do enough damage to compensate missing those economy upgrades. For example, people are realizing that skipping Horse Scholar is a good idea if you want to put the pressure in feudal age. Horse Scholar costs 150 resources, 75 food, 75 wood, and only pays back way later. And so we're realizing that if you just skip out on that upgrade, we're able to afford more units that can get us more value by killing our opponent's units or harassing him, pushing him off important resources, and that pays back a lot more than the farm benefit of Horse Scholar. People are also messing around with doing only 1 lumber camp builds. So ideally in feudal age, you want to have 2 lumber camps to have your villas working efficiently. But people are realizing that we can cut that 100 wood on the 2nd lumber camp and only go for 1 lumber camp when we're going for these really fast 18 pop builds. And lastly, people are realizing that making walls early game slows you down heavily. So we were in a walling meta around 2-3 years ago, but since walls got nerfed, people are opting for more aggressive builds, and we're cutting out all walls when going for these aggressive builds, because you can't afford army and walling up your base when you're upping at 18 pop. So we start with the army, we go for the fast rush, and only after we stabilize our economy do we go ahead and wall up our base. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you guys learned something, or I hope you guys use this video to find competitive AoE2 more fun to watch. People always say Dark Age is boring. Oh, we should skip Dark Age. Look out for who's doing the better Dark Age. It's usually going to be the player who wins the game, because this is what tournament preparation is all about. Of course, games aren't decided, won or lost all the time in Dark Age, but it's usually the more prepared and the better player who will have the better Dark Age. So that's what I mean by that. And I hope you guys found this interesting. Let me know if you have any feedback on the style of video, and if you have any topics you want me to cover in future videos. I'm really enjoying Age of Empires 2 right now, and I'm doubling down, very committed to double down into my play, improve that as much as I can, and also improve my content both on YouTube and Twitch. So any feedback is highly appreciated, and if you have a fun topic that you want me to cover, or an interesting topic, I'm more than happy to cover it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.